Mindful Reinvention. This talk is all about how to adapt fast in times of constant change. Through this talk, we're going to give 3 genuinely life-changing tips that are going to help you on your personal level, also in your business journey, and as a member of your society, because change is constant. It's going to come faster than ever before. And it already is pretty fast. So we need to get comfortable with change. We need to embrace it. And in this short talk, you'll learn exactly how to do that. But first of all, before we talk change, let's take stock of our as-is scenario. How is the world looking today? Well, today, as you can see, we've got 25% of all people impacted by mental illness. We've got the top 1% owning more than double of the bottom 90%. We know it takes 4 generations for children from low-income families to approach even average income. We also know that obesity within adults has got 5 times worse in the last 30 years. We also know that AI is coming and it's going to disrupt positively, in my opinion, how we work and how we live. So we know more change is coming. Throughout the talk, we're going to talk about how an underlying thinking is what we use to create our systems. And our systems give us a level of performance. Now, if we're looking at our level of performance, if this is our results of our system, which is because of our underlying thinking, it leads us to know 2 things. If our thinking stays the same, we'll see more of the same results. Corporates will keep making more money than ever before, but at what cost? So, what we need to consider is how to change. And we need to think about what happens if we keep the same thinking. These results will just keep compounding. They will continue to get worse. They will continue in the same trajectory, in the same pattern. And is this something we want? If we want something very different, we need to think very differently. By thinking very differently, the systems we create will be different and the performance we see will be very different. We'll get into this in the second life-changing tip that we'll get into, which will help you on your mindful reinvention. But for now, let's just stay on this topic. This is the as-is scenario. This is also part of the as-is scenario. This is what the result is. More profits, worse life experience for people, worse mental health, worse physical health, worse financial health. I would ask you now just to pause for a second and just reflect, just very quickly. Where do you fit into this scenario? Because if you're of good health in your mind, if you're in good health physically, if you're on average or above average income, and if your organization is thinking of AI, you are probably in the best position that there could be given our current context. We also know that change is going to keep coming. And we can see that primarily through these 2 key factors. One of them is that we've got more conflicts right now than there has been since the Second World War. What we also know is ChatGPT was the fastest adopted technology the world has ever seen by a long, long way. It was incredibly faster than electricity, the telephone, the mobile phone. It's exponential. And so we know that change is going to come, right? Lots of things are going to shake up. So we need to be prepared for change, ready to accept it, ready to embrace it. And this is where mindfulness and the idea of being in a constant reinvention is a fantastic resource for you. And that's why we're going into these 3 tips later on. You see, if society doesn't change, we get the same results. And unfortunately, at the moment in society, there's no one obvious to turn to, is there? There's no Gandhi that we can go to who will give us the best solution that's right for the people, the planet, and sustainable. So it's up to us to change our thinking. If we want an opposite result, we probably need the opposite thinking. So then here's a quote to also just reflect on. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. We need to embody the change we want to see, which is a Gandhi quote. We need to embody it. We need to be it. Lots of digital transformations have failed, primarily for the reason that leadership, in the end, the top leadership, are not prepared to be the change they want to see. They've had such a strong identity developed from the success that they've gained in their current ways of thinking or ways of behaving that making that change is not just difficult for them on a personal level, but it's very difficult just on a business application level. How do I leave my old practices and go to my new practices? And if you're not totally sold on that in your mind, and if you don't feel the right way to behave and speak in that new model, it's very hard to change. So digital transformations notoriously fail very often because we don't change ourselves. And this is a good message for everyone here listening. It's that it's easy in a way to look at the problems in the world. And it's easy in a way to say, well, that's the obvious solution. The difficult thing is becoming the solution. And there's ways that we can do that. It just requires being honest about yourself, to yourself, being aware of yourself, understanding your behaviors, understanding your beliefs, your values, how you see your own identity, and learning to accept that and really embrace who you are, so that you can nurture the best possible you. And then you will feel wise, like you know yourself. You will be the change you want to see. And then you can support the world, meaning your friends, your family, your businesses, your teams, your colleagues, and perhaps even your society, to be the change that we know we need to see. Change is very emotional. Every single person that goes through change goes through the same emotional event. This is the Kubler-Ross model. First of all, it started off as a model looking at grief. And then we realized that actually people that go through change, a change moment, go through the same cycle. It might be at a different depth, a different length, a different moment or period of time, but in every way, every change is making us go through this cycle. Now imagine that your favorite app on your phone changes its design. It doesn't tell you. You go to use it. It looks totally different. You can't find the buttons. You would go through this cycle, right? You'd be shocked. You'd think, oh my God, maybe I need to re-download it. Then you'd re-download it and still be very frustrated. Then you'd be, oh my God, how am I going to live without this app? Perhaps it's emails. Oh my God, I can't send emails. What am I going to do? Then you start to play around with new ideas. You realize the way that it can work. You slim down on loads of these different things you've been experimenting with, and you find the way that works. You make your decision, you stick to it, and now that's integrated as part of you, and you're over that change event and better for it. That's the beautiful thing about change. It always feels like it's been done to us. But what we also need to remember is that it's always working for our highest ascension. It's working in our benefit. We will always become better as a result of change. There's so much opportunity in change because it forces us to grow. The problem for us is that we go through these emotional cycles while it happens. So it's hard to keep on to the idea that change is good and that there's opportunity here because we feel so intense. So this is why we'll start to go into mindfulness and very simple mindful techniques, because it's possible to gain a little bit of distance between your emotion and you. It's possible to not become your emotion, but to stay stable in who you are, to stay stable in peace, in joy, in bliss, perhaps even in love. Change is particularly difficult because we have these inherent cycles that influence our behavior. So a particular thought, oh my God, where's the button that I need to send these emails gone? Will give you an emotion, that will create your action. Obviously, that will shape your behavior, which over time forms your habits. Now, the good news is you can intervene at any level. The technique to intervene changes. So you can intervene on your thoughts, you can pause, take a moment, realize that you have this thought. You can, with comfort, challenge yourself to broaden your perspective. Is that the only truth? What other truths are there? How else could you see this? And in the end, you build up a big picture. And then you say, if all of that was true, how would I feel? What would I see? What would I believe? And it's magic. All of a sudden, you don't feel the way you did before. You now feel very positive and able to adapt fast in this change moment. Similarly, if you acknowledge that you're feeling this emotion, again, you can intervene with that same technique. With your action and behavior and habits, it's a little different because you have already been triggered and now you're already behaving, you're in motion. So with action, behavior, and habits, we need to pause, we need to zoom out, we need to get conscious of what is happening. What's the thought? What's the emotion? What's the action? And then we can decide, okay, when I feel this emotion, I will change the action. I'll famously, when people try to quit smoking, instead of smoking, they'll do something else, right? My mother tried to quit smoking and she has now quit. For a little while, she put empty cigarettes in a jar with water. When she felt like she was going to have a cigarette, when the emotion hit her, she'd open the jar and smell it. And imagine what that did for her behavior, for her habits. Eventually, she really didn't want that cigarette. For transparency, that wasn't the only thing that allowed her to quit, but it was part of her journey. And so for you, it's the same. You have to first of all become aware, become conscious. Then you have to deliberately choose something that you want to do instead. And then it's a matter of being patient and kind with yourself. In the second technique, we're going to give you a top tip for how you can manage your own behavior and create profound behavior change in just 6 weeks. So stay tuned for that. But we're building now this idea of mindfulness as a technique. And that is our top tip for you today. That's the first one. And in a moment, I'd love for you to experience it. But for now, let's just talk a little bit more about responding to change. Now, change moments happen in so many different ways: grand scales, small scales, personal, business, also, again, to do with just society, like technology. And we may not always be in control of when they happen. Sometimes they just come when they want. So, a good technique, again, it's all based on awareness. So when you know that this event is triggering for you, you know it's going to stimulate you and cause this impact within you, and then you're going to respond and react in this way that you don't want, it's a very simple technique. So, first of all, you become conscious of that it's happening. Then you understand why it's happening. It's all very logical. But you can also feel logic when you think it. And if it feels really good in your soul, if it feels warm, you know you're on the right thinking. So we have a plan in place about how we're going to rework that thought and that emotion so it stimulates us differently. Then we have another plan in place that will then allow us to act differently. So we know, okay, when this trigger happens, I'm going to challenge my thinking, remind myself of the highest truths and the most useful thinking. Then I'm going to react in the most useful way. Now, to do that in the moment, you have to slow things down a little bit. And to do that, we use PIMS. It's very simple. We just train ourselves. Okay, the event is going to happen. I'm walking into my manager's office. I'm going to have a difficult conversation with my partner or my child. Just before I walk in, I just take a few moments just to pause, let the air fall out of my lungs, really empty myself. Then I relax. I let myself inhale all the way, lower belly, middle belly, upper chest, nice and full. And remind myself a mantra, it's all good, or whatever you choose. And on the out breath, you allow yourself to smile. This is fantastic. If you did it with me just now, you would have seen and felt the physiological impact of what is essentially one proper breath. And that's my suggestion. Take this proper breath before you go to the event. When the event happens, take another breath. Before you react, take another breath. And those 3 spaces that you gain for yourself before, in the moment, and before, or just before you react, those 3 breaths will be very powerful for you in how you navigate change and allow you to navigate change a lot faster. Now, before we get into top tip number 1, you're probably thinking, who is Rayyan and what gives him the credibility to be able to talk to us about this? So just for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of my personal background. Now, what you'll notice is that my sense of self, my identity, my beliefs, my values, my behavior changes dramatically over time. And you'll see why. Now, my early years were maybe a little bumpy to most people on the surface, right? It's not your average happy story, really. It's very bumpy. So, my father is Pakistani. He came to England when he was 4. My mother is from England. They divorced when I was 4. My mother went into an asylum for about a month. She came out just before me and my brother went into care. My father then is sort of around, not around, a bit inconsistent. And we grow up in Essex, which is just east of London. And it's quite a working class, relatively quite a poor area. And for me, as someone who's half Pakistani, it was very racist. So just growing up in that pressure cooker was very tough, and it took me many years to even appreciate that it was a pressure cooker. But right from as young as I can remember, I had this feeling of not belonging, and the best I've been able to understand it is my Pakistani family would see me as the Gora, the white cousin or the white person, and my friends that were English working class would say that I was a Pakistani. And I didn't associate with either, and neither groups would have me. So for that reason, I found it tough to try and understand who I am. As you can imagine, growing up in that environment can create lots of undesirable behavior. From quite a young age, I realized I was not able to sleep very well. That led to experimenting with drugs. I mean, also because of the amount of confusion and the sort of rough nature of my environment growing up, it was very common to get caught in street fights. We were also very poor. We needed to earn money. We looked at the habits of people around us. We knew that we were under 18. So, we thought we would push the boundaries of the law, really, and get involved in all sorts of strange behaviour, like drug dealing, selling things we didn't have, and deliberately hanging around with football hooligans so that we could have a tear up. Obviously, all of this led to me gaining a juvenile criminal record, which I'm very embarrassed about, but it's the truth, it happened. Fortunately for me, it was a juvenile record. And at around 18, I had lots of events happen at the same time that really made me question, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to continue with this same thinking, this same system, and get this same performance, right? This feeling that I had, the behavior I had, the activities I would do, my belief system. Am I going to keep it or am I going to change it? Do I want this or is something else possible? And it's in that moment I had a dream of becoming a business doctor because I had no idea what a consultant was at the time. Right? I'd never heard of one. Didn't know anything. Just knew my environment, nothing else. And so I had this dream. I also only had a few months of my last year of A-levels left. And I basically changed my friends, stopped what I was doing for money, hit the books, resat lots of exams, went to university in Manchester, which is at the opposite end of the country. I got a first, I started and sold a business, I travelled around the country and I travelled around Guatemala and Mexico, and then I joined the Fast Track to Executive Leadership scheme at a big British bank, which taught me all about transformative change. We're going to get into some of that in the second tips, and also about how to lead people. It was very much agile transformation, but we blended systemic change, human-centered design, and lots of mindset and behavior related learning into the way that we worked. So, amongst many other things, I became a lead of 150 people at just the age of 26, and that was in their brand new method. That big bank had spent 4 years developing 10 new core services. They spent £1 billion. They then transformed that learning into one new operating model and put 18,000 people into this new operating model. And I was a part of that. I was a part of the central team that designed what that transformation was going to be. I was part of the HR program that designed what that meant for the way people would flow and be nurtured and exit well and rejoin again throughout the organization. And I also had the opportunity then to train lots of people, mentor people, coach people, and start my own lab, which is this 150 people in this brand new method. From there, I went to a startup, then to IBM, and they, sent me around to work with many of their clients. The best story is going to Sao Paulo, where I helped to rescue a $2 billion relationship in just 3 days. I was the lead. I had a colleague with me. And again, I was only 28. It's very young. So from there, I wrote 3 books, helped more companies across different industries and different continents. Now, that was all good. You can see now this story developing. You can see there's been a big leap, a big change. And at some point, I really challenged my thinking and took new thinking on board. I went to university, I went traveling, I joined the corporates. All this new thinking creates such different system and structure around me. Gave me discipline, gave me focus, gave me belief, gave me confidence, gave me success in my terms at that moment. And that just allowed me to compound, right? I was very much keeping the same thinking and compounding between that system that I'd set up and the performance I was getting, and was just enhancing the performance and the system continuously. Now, that led me to the point I was at maybe a few years ago, where I moved to Spain, and I decided that, you know what? I have my own idea of success. If I'm really true and honest with myself, it's not what mainstream society think it to be. So when I really thought of what that was, I was able to really put myself in a new place. And that's the place I'm at now. So I continue to write, to speak, to coach, to mentor. I love to do those things. I also now teach meditation and mindfulness, and anything I'm involved in always has to have a personal impact um, outcome associated with it. And this is the life I wanted to have. I also moved to Spain, and in between the last few years, I've lived in a few different countries. You could call me a digital nomad, but Spain is home. I'm based in Andalusia now, and that lifestyle that you can now hear me speak of. The writing, the speaking, coaching, mentoring, meditation, mindfulness, on socially entrepreneurial activities. Very different to me in my very early years context, or in my teenage years, or in my coming of age moment. Very different identity, very different beliefs, very different values, very different behavior. Very interesting. Everyone has their own journey. You have your own journey too. You have an iceberg. What's your iceberg? And it's okay. It's good to be vulnerable, to share your story with other people. It enhances the relationship. Imagine if you knew the iceberg of your colleagues. Imagine if you could map your colleagues' icebergs to your customers and allow people to work on things that really, really talk to their whole life journey. Imagine the power. Imagine the additional customer value that could be unlocked. So that's me. Now let's move on to the top tip number one. Now, we're about halfway through the talk now, so we're going to start getting into each of the techniques. Just so you know that time-wise, it's a good time to pause, have a refresh, go to the toilet, stretch your legs, have a stretch, have a few deep breaths, whatever you need to do, and then come back to the video. For those of you that are comfortable, we're just going to continue now. So mindful reinvention technique number one, which will help you adapt fast in times of change, becoming aware of your mindset. A really simple way to understand this, because mindset is extremely complex and complicated, is fixed versus growth mindsets. Now, you can see it on the screen and you can feel it in your own mind when this happens. Sometimes you feel ready for the new opportunity. You're excited about what's possible. You're thinking of different ways it could go, and you're open to even more coming because you're just excited to try new things and to see how you grow as a result of it. That's a fantastic place to be. That place will help you constantly adapt to change in the fastest possible way with no detriment to yourself. You'll just be absorbing the good stuff. Now, on the other side of things, if you're limiting your mind, if you're telling yourself that you don't want to change, or you don't like to be challenged, or you want to stick with your current knowledge, or your current system, or your current level of performance, unfortunately, it means you're rowing against the tide. The world is changing at a faster pace than ever before. We have to get okay with change. We have to embrace it. We have to find the opportunity. So, the technique I'll share with you now is a way to flip yourself from fixed to growth mindset. And it involves PIMS. So what I want you to do is just put your feet on the floor in the chair you're in. Make sure that you're sitting directly on top of your sitting bones, and that from your sitting bones, your spine is nice and straight. And then from the top of your head, it's as if you're a puppet on a string being suspended. So imagine being pulled slightly upwards by the crown point, and at the same time, feeling the sense of gravity from your sitting bones into the chair that you're in. Now turn your hands, palms facing upwards, and rest them on your thighs. When you're ready, just pause. Just let your out breath finish. We breathe naturally, so we will inhale when we're ready. And you do that by relaxing your lower belly, letting all the air in there, then allowing the air to come into your middle belly, and then your upper chest. Feel that sense of fullness. Remind yourself it's all good, or whatever your mantra is. And then relax the out breath and smile as you do. So we'll just do that once more. The out breath is finishing, so we just pause. We feel suspended by the crown point, and we feel gravity in the chair. We inhale, lower belly, middle belly, upper chest. We use our mantra. We smile as we let the air leave us. We get to the end of the breath. We pause. Naturally, we inhale by relaxing the lower belly. The air comes in to the middle belly as well, then to the upper chest. Then we feel nice and full. We repeat the mantra. We relax. The air leaves us and we smile. So we'll leave that exercise there. If you're listening, probably my voice has changed. Maybe it's a little bit deeper now. And that just shows the power of mindful breathing. If you did that with me, congratulations. If you've never meditated before, you can now say you have had an experience of meditation. It is simply sitting or standing or walking or talking, just going through life with a conscious breath in and out. That's the beginning of meditation, becoming aware that we're naturally breathing. And it's that ability to be in touch with our breath that is really the secret to being able to adapt well in times of change. Whenever we feel the emotion we don't want, or we see the mindset that's not useful, or we are considering changing our behavior and we're looking for ideas, if we just take a few moments to use this PIMS technique, just a few moments to pause, inhale, use the mantra to smile. The mantra can change, it doesn't matter. You don't have to use one, it's okay. But it just helps you become conscious of the in-breath, the out-breath. If you can do that for a few moments, you will gain peace. You will gain clarity. You will gain calm. And it's in that peaceful, joyful clarity that you can then change your thinking, because it will happen naturally once your state of being has changed. When you then think about the context you're in, you'll have an upgrade in your thinking. Try it. It will be genuinely incredibly life-changing for you, as it has been for me. I love this. I love memes and GIFs. So here's a good one for you. When you've been stressed and emotional all week, you meditate on it and you regain your inner peace. That's what it's all about, you know. So hopefully that was a good takeaway for you. We're moving on now to our second technique. Now, what are you looking at? These are all examples of the same thing. It's one word. It begins and ends with an S. They are all systems. Human body's a system. So is car, so is nature, so is gyms and business, so is family, so is sports. Simply, a system is a set of parts that come together, that produce something together that alone they just can't do. A car is a fantastic example. If you don't have all the parts of a car, they are not going to work. You won't have movement. because the parts are not fitted together. As soon as you put the parts together, the car has movement. The human body, we have life. And it's the same for all systems. We get an emergent property. Also, very interestingly, the parts have to fit very well, don't they? Think of nature, think of your human body. They fit perfectly. Think of high performance cars. They fit perfectly. Now imagine taking a low performance car with a high performance car and trying to use some parts from one and some parts from another. You would not get optimal performance. Quite possibly you'd get no performance because the parts do not fit. So the system doesn't work and the underlying thinking was invalid. So these are all systems. Now we know we have an underlying thinking that allows us to create a system that allows us to gain a level of performance. This is true for you on a personal level. You have your underlying thinking, beliefs, values, ideology, culture, an understanding of what health is. You have certain facts that you hold on to. You don't know some things, you have unknowns, and you also have assumptions and many more parts of your underlying thinking. That allows you to, conscious and unconsciously, create a system of engaging with the world, of living. And that gives you a level of performance, which we would all probably look at differently. But for me, I look at my energy, my mind, my general experience of life, my mental health, whether I'm always learning, adapting, growing, and whether the money in the bank is continuing to roll in. Earlier, we spoke about keeping the same thinking and how you can compound the benefit. And this is a bit like my corporate journey, which then led me to write the books and work with so many different companies across different industries and continents. It's just compounding. So it's saying, let's keep the same thinking now and let's continuously improve. Lots of us do this in business. This is the common way of improving. We end up with lots of fast, frequent changes, some quick wins, that sort of stuff. However, we're not by nature expanding our comfort zone. And that's because we don't have to. But if our underlying thinking does need to change, then we need to expand our comfort zone. Now, our comfort zone can be very limiting because if we stay there, we're often in a fixed mindset. So a great thing to do is to start to explore the things you don't know that you have an interest in. A new book, a new bit of knowledge, a new author, that sort of thing. Once you are led there, you may discover an experience or a new bit of knowledge that you'd never seen before, you had no idea of, and then you give that a go. Now, this is fantastic for creating new neural pathways in the mind and in the body. So if you do look at your performance and think you need to have a very different level of performance, a fantastic thing to do is start to do new things. Even doing the same thing in a new way will help your brain embrace change. You could walk a different way home. You could brush your teeth with the other hand. And examples like that. If you do seek new knowledge, new information, you gain new underlying thinking. Fantastic. Now you can develop a brand new system which will give you a brand new level of performance, and it will be transformative. It will be drastically different. This is like me in my adolescence, up to no good, having to dramatically challenge my thinking, take on board a lot of new thinking and a really fast rate and pace, create new systems and ways of living continuously, and then boom, look at the level of performance we see as a result. And this is the same for business, for software, for families, for relationships, every part of life. is systemic by nature. So this is super useful to keep in mind. With double loop thinking, it's difficult sometimes because we don't know immediately what the performance will be. So you could call that a leap of faith, or you could call that a conscious experiment. And again, this is where elements of mindfulness come in. But it's possible to create a mindful experiment in your personal life. It's also possible to create a business experiment. And double loop thinking helps us to gain that moment where we realize, oh, actually, we're really challenging our underlying thinking here. Therefore, the results we see may not be immediate. And also, we may need to look at the results differently, have different metrics, etc., which may take us time to learn. So, when you double loop, you have to do less interventions because they're higher quality, and you have to monitor them for at least 3 months. Every 6 weeks, the human brain changes shape. So you will see in 6 weeks, the new thinking in the new system, you'll start to see the early signs of the new performance, but that will now be consistent. So then you watch it for another 6 weeks, which takes you to the end of 3 months. And this is where that new thinking starts to compound. And this is where at the end of 3 months, you look back and you think, oh my God, I've just really upgraded my soul, my mind, my skill, my character, my ability to deliver strategic improvement, my ability to deliver strategic initiatives, to deliver my product backlog. 3 months. To do that in a business context is something that we're all familiar with, because frequently we have people come to organizations and say, you need to change. And that's because top leadership have acknowledged that they need to change, or the company strategically is a risk. And we saw this with the agile movement, where we were transitioning traditional leadership models and a lot of management into being much more visionary, much more nurturing. And so we had to really challenge our underlying thinking. What does it mean to be a leader? Do we need management? What environment should we create for people? How much do we tell versus ask? How do we now create environments where people can flourish? Because we respect that it's the people that are closest to the work that make the best decisions, not the managers. So then we can work faster, we can gain higher quality, we can learn at a faster rate and pace, and ultimately we can deliver more customer value than before. Very difficult change in mindset, but there's a journey to go through that makes that very, very possible. Another change that we then see in business is, well, maybe the way we see the performance has changed. It's no longer just about revenue, more revenue every quarter and the efficiency of the revenue, right? It's no longer about that. It's now about the lifetime value of the customer. And therefore, what's the customer's experience, their well-being while they use the business services, and how loyal can we make that customer so they stick to our business. And the same thinking flows through into our colleagues, into the staff members, right? How can they have the most valuable experience? What about their well-being? How can we make sure that they're loyal, they stay with us, they grow with us, they learn with us, they add more value to us? That's quite new thinking. That's quite a new way of looking at performance. So the knowledge that we will need is very different. So we went into a little bit of that knowledge earlier with servant leadership, but we also know that it changes the way that we structure organizations. We also know it changes the way we look at problem solving. We look at things now as systems, as interconnected, not in a short-term, isolated compartments. And we look at real, long-lasting solutions instead of quick wins. As a result, we have to find new thinking, new knowledge. We have to learn what systemic change is. We have to learn about interconnectedness, about complexity, variation. We have to learn about how to really drive impact in the leanest way, how to be human-centric, how to think holistically, how to create intrinsically motivating workplaces and a purpose-driven work activity that's sustainable and enables a community hive mind type thinking. As a result, we seek totally different models of breaking strategy down, understanding customers, and also of understanding teams. So we create new systems. Now together you're starting to see how Double Loop comes together. We start with the performance, we go and find all the best thinking, we make sure that's within our psyche, that we feel it, that we are it, that we think like that now. And then we go and approach the problems that we're looking to solve with this higher level of thinking. We create the system, we run it, we see the performance, we monitor it at least 3 months. Obviously, organizations like to start small experiments, proof of concepts, and then you grow from there. That way, there's no risk to the business model. A fantastic way to do this with businesses, and this is top tip number 2 for you now, it's called Can't I? And that means constant and never-ending transformative improvement. So never again should you think that I cannot. You definitely can. You just need to find new thinking. In a business, you can use the strategizer test card to help you frame that thinking and run the experiment, as I say, 3 months at least. Ideally, if you've got objectives and key results, you can map your key initiatives to what's going to move the needle. You use the test card to define it. You be very clear whether you're challenging the underlying thinking or not. You can use all of that definition with the skill set of people that will be doing the work and the people that will be doing the work to estimate their perceived value, the perceived effort, both in terms of customer, business, colleague. Create these t-shirt sizes which convert to the Fibonacci system, plot them on a graph, and then very clearly, this is the highest value, least effort initiative. Because they're going to be transformative initiatives, it's very important that you just choose the one thing to do now and just run that for 3 months. If you have too much transformative change, you're changing too many things at once, it's going to be very messy, you're not going to get any results, and if you do, you won't be able to know for sure what gave you the results. And that's the benefit of conscious experimentation, knowing what worked. So for you, in your business, what would you double loop think on? What experiment would you like to run? Now maybe you can comment below the video. Now, what experiments would you run in your business, in your team, in your department, in your division, in your centralizing functions, in HR, in finance, in legal? What experiments would you run? And on your personal life, what you can also think about in exactly the same way is constant and never-ending transformative improvement. Whenever you think, I can't, you can. So this is how you do it. Human brain changes shape in 6 weeks. It's called neuroplasticity. So once you know what it is that you want to change, and you know the outcome, you can feel it, you can see it, you can sense it. Very easy. What we do is use neuroscience to hack our mind. So if you open a calendar in your phone, just as an example, and look at the date 6 weeks from now, and pick a specific time. In the calendar, note to yourself, You write these exact words. It is this exact date and time. Then you say the thing you have been doing. I have been driving calmly with a smile on my face. I feel fantastic, at peace and harmony with the world around me. I see smiling drivers, patient people, and I am proud of myself. When this notification goes off, I am about to pick my child up from school. And you write it in that way so that your brain has a marker in the future about what is going to happen. You simply save it in your phone with notification on, and you leave it there. In 6 weeks' time, you'll then be able to validate how much progress you're making. This is a profound thing to start to do with yourself. And it is the basis of my behavior change program, Design Your Future. It's all about getting to these experiments, and we practice it every week over 6 weeks while continuing to dig deeper and deeper into you. Now, top tip number 3, just quickly, what you might want to do then is make this as a note for later. Have a reflection moment. If there is a double loop thinking that you'd like to do, write this in. The example I gave was obviously about an angry driver with road rage. So, what's your example? Of course you can. I can't does not exist. Now, we'll move on to the final tip, and that brings us nearly towards the end now of our talk and time together. I hope you've gained a lot from what we've discussed and what we've shared. I hope the techniques and the exercises are working for you. And what I'd like to just leave the talk with is this last mindful reinvention technique. If you're going to adapt fast in times of change, sometimes it's really difficult to change your thinking. It's hard to challenge it because we're so attached to who we are, and that helps us function in the world. It's very important that we have that. So it can be tough. What can also be tough is knowing what knowledge base to use. And there is so much out there. You've got the Western psychological angle, which is more about you as an individual taking control and being able to healthily compete just with yourself to get better. And you can see that Maslow's hierarchy of needs there mapped on the image on the screen. The physiological, the safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, and then self-actualization. And you can also see how that maps to more of the Eastern philosophy too, which is very interesting because they seem very different on the surface. Eastern philosophy is more about the collective, the unified, the community. It's all about finding contentment and collaborating with others. And you can see it's similar intent, slightly different angle. And listen, there's a place for both of these things. Western psychology is fantastic at solving the problem of helping you to gain control, learn yourself, healthily compete with yourself. And the Eastern philosophy, the yoga, the Tai Chi, the Reiki, that sort of stuff, the sound healing, is really good if you need a sense of collaboration with others, contentment, and a feeling of being part of a collective. We all need different things in different moments. So top tip number 3 is urging you. It's West and East. It's science and spirituality. It's modern science and ancient spirituality. And it's modern spirituality and ancient science. All of it. Take it all. It's all extremely helpful. You do not need to take on board every single part of all of it. Just take the bits that work for you. Once you've found that one golden nugget that helps move you forward, run your experiment. Do not try to change everything at once. Remember, change always starts with us. We have to be the change before we can make it possible. So we're now coming to the end of the talk, and I just want to recap on those top 3 tips. So the first one is PIMS, that pause, that inhale, the mantra, the smile. That can help you change fast because it allows you to gain conscious space. It allows you to regenerate your ideas. It allows you to be peaceful, to be calm, to be joyful, regardless of the emotional nature of the change you're in. The second top tip is conscious experimentation. This is going to help you change fast because you'll be able to cut through the noise. You'll become clear on whether you're keeping your thinking and single loop, or whether you're going to challenge your thinking, gain new knowledge and double loop. That's going to change the way that you monitor your improvements. If you single loop, you can do as many changes as you want at once as part of your capacity. But with double loop, you have to just do one at a time. And the third was to consider west and east when you think about your underlying thinking. Take it all in and go step by step. And this is the last message I'd love to leave you with today. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We spoke about pretty huge topics in less than an hour. It can be a lot to take on board. So I urge you just to go step by step. The fact is, none of us know how many steps we're going to have. The other fact is, we know that we can only go one step at a time. So that's what I urge you to do. Stay with the truth. So, thank you for listening. I've been Rayyan Karim. You can find out more about me through these 2 mechanisms. So, through rayyankarim.com and through my LinkedIn, you'll be able to gain access to my personal behavior change program, Design Your Future. You'll also be able to gain access to my leadership transformation method and the basis of my leadership coaching and mentoring. You'll also be able to see my Ultimate Change Agents training, which is a book, but also a 3-day training, which allows you to create mindful change agents within your organization. This is for leadership teams, this is for talent schemes, that sort of thing. What you'll also be able to find is a lot of my mindfulness orientated assets. We've got podcasts, we've got some clips on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Check them out. We will also have the ability to get day to day, week to week, month to month support directly for your personal mindful journey too, all through what you see in front of you on the screen. So listen, I'd love to know what resonated with you, what landed the most, what was the most helpful. Put it in the comments below. Your team there will feed it all back to me. It's going to be so incredible for me to gain your feedback and insight. I can use it to continuously improve or to double loop think what I'm trying to express here. So please be very honest, be direct, be forthcoming. Tell me what worked, what stuck in your mind, and tell me what I can do better. Take care. I wish you all the best. And just before we go, I'd just like to thank all of you for being here. I'd like to thank the team that made this possible. And I'd like to thank the interconnected universe that seems to make all things possible.